Hey everyone, just tacking this on to the beginning of the video since I forgot to talk about it at first, but yeah. This video will contain spoilers for basically all of Fairy Tail, so if you don't want to get spoiled on it, then please take the next 5 seconds to exit out of this video. Alright, and with that being said, let's start the video, shall we? What's up, people? D-Master here, and I bet you weren't expecting this, but yep, just like the title says, this is going to be a video about why the Nahwen Ship is a good ship and why I ship it. Basically, you could call it a Nahwen analysis video. So yeah, usually I just post A and Bs to my YouTube channel, and if you are in fanfiction or Wattpad, you know I write fanfiction and fanfiction, yeah, on those sites about the Natsu times Wendy ship because it is frigging amazing, obviously. But yeah, I decided that I wanted to actually just do a full-on analysis video on exactly all the points why I actually got into the ship and why I like it, and just some general discussions about it basically. So yeah, I'm not sure how long this video will be. It might be short, might be really long, but it's probably going to be the latter considering I have a lot to say about this ship. I'm a huge fan of it, of course, as if that wasn't obvious, but yeah, so you probably want to strap in for this one. But anyway, let's get started, shall we? Oh, and just in case any of you NaWen haters are watching this video for some reason, even though I'm sure you are, for whatever reason, because you have no lives or something or whatever. But don't worry, I have a video for you too, so you can watch that later on. Anyway, moving on from that. First things first, how I got into the Nahwen ship. Now, there are 3 things I look for when I am looking for a good ship. The first thing is relationship development. How the couple starts and how the relationship progresses and evolves over time and throughout the series. The second thing I look for is chemistry. How the pair interacts and bounces off of each other. Believable interactions, pleasant interactions, just interactions and chemistry in general that would show how the pair would work together as a couple. The third and final thing I look for is growth. How the two would grow and learn from each other. How they would evolve. How they would benefit from having a romantic relationship with each other in the first place. All the stuff like that. Put all 3 of those together, and if they're all done well and make sense, then it's a good ship. And I realized that Natsu times Wendy had all 3 of these elements done well. So that is why I ship them. But we're going to go more into detail about all of this. Alright, so how I got into the Nahwen ship. Basically, I like to ship characters who obviously have crushes on another character. Like, for example, outside of Fairy Tail, there is also Yu-Gi-Oh! GX and what's another one? Angel's 3-piece and Naruto. That's another big one. In each of those shows, there are characters who have a blatantly obvious crush on the main character. In Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, it's Rei or Blair if you watch the dub for it. And Naruto, it's obviously Hinata. And in Angel's 3-piece, it's a character named June. So in Fairy Tail, I noticed Wendy's crush on Natsu right away because it was very freaking obvious. And so, yeah, I pretty much got into the ship like that, basically. But the reason I like to do that is because whenever I see a character who has a crush on another character, especially if it's the main character, then it just makes me want to root for them really badly. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but I'm just going to chalk it up to the fact that they actually have a crush on the character, and I just want to cheer for them to end up with that character. And since Wendy was the first character who was introduced with a crush on Natsu, I instantly got into that ship. Well, aside from Lasana, but at that point in the story, she was assumed to be dead, so yeah. But anyway, the point I'm getting at here is that whenever I see a character has a crush on another one, I just really want to automatically ship them and root for them to get what they want. Because they're introduced with a goal and their own wants, and I want to see them achieve that goal and get what they want. Now, of course, in a show like Fairy Tail, the romance isn't at the center focus, so it's actually hard for characters who have crushes to end up getting what they want because romance isn't important. It's most about the action and the adventure. But that actually honestly makes me want to root for them even more. So that's probably why NaWen is like my favorite ship in like any kind of fiction ever, because it involves romance in a non-romance centric show. Now, with all that being said, I actually didn't ship NaWen that heavy at first, even though I did ship it right away, of course, because of Wendy's crush on Natsu. It wasn't until I started to notice how Wendy was taking actions to achieve her goals and her wants of at least trying to become closer to Natsu. As I mentioned before, Fairy Tail is in a romance, so romance is not going to be at the forefront at all. However, Wendy still constantly showed her affection and her caring towards Natsu and what happened to him. You see a whole bunch of this throughout the entire Nirvana arc, and even throughout the rest of the show later on, but especially during the Nirvana arc, you see it a lot. And that's when I started to get more and more into the ship, until by the end of it, I was just all in, and it became one of my favorite ships, because like the entire conclusion of their interactions and relationship in that arc was just so freaking good and heartwarming, and I just couldn't help like wanting to make that one of my favorite ships ever at that point. So yeah, that is pretty much how I got into the Nahwen ship. Now, that is going to lead us into the first segment of this video, Natsu's and Wendy's relationship development. As I've mentioned before previously, Wendy does all of the typical things that a girl like Wendy does when they have a crush on somebody. You see her constantly looking at Natsu, staring at him, smiling at him, and laughing at his jokes even when they aren't funny. She does all of this from the beginning since she meets him. She is shown to be constantly worried about his safety and well-being just as much as she is for Jalal's. Again, as far as they know at this point in the story, Natsu and Wendy are pretty much strangers for each other. They've barely known each other for a day, yet she is still worried about him just as much as she is about Jalal, someone who she had spent a lot of her time growing up with. That says a lot. And what it says is that she likes Natsu, alright? The final battle of the arc even ends with Wendy running up to Natsu, leaping into his arms, and hugging him. Do I really need to even say any more at that point? I probably don't, but I will anyway. Wendy is actually the first girl to ever hug Natsu. Not only that, but Natsu smiled during it. There hasn't been a single other instance where Natsu has smiled while being hugged by a girl. Just saying. Now, fast forward over into the Edalus arc, and you get to see more of Wendy's crush on Natsu come to the forefront, especially during the beginning stages of it, since Natsu and Wendy have a lot of alone time in it, which is friggin' awesome, by the way. But the point I'm getting at here is that during the beginning stages of the Edalus arc, when Natsu, Wendy, Happy, and Carla are going around traversing the world of Edalus, and Natsu, is causing a scene, Wendy is always defending him whenever Carla starts hounding and berating him. It says a lot when Wendy stands up to Carla. Usually she's a bit reluctant to do so, and so far the only time she has ever done that has been when Carla was going in on Happy, so yeah. Now, in Natsu's case, Carla wasn't being too hard on him, and she actually had a lot of valid points. Even so, Wendy still decided to defend Natsu and assure and reconsole him, saying things like he didn't really mean to scare the fisherman away, or that Natsu is a really nice guy and he doesn't even mean to cause trouble to Carla. Just always looking out for him, like a good girlfriend would do. Yeah, that's what Wendy does. Another thing Wendy does, actually, that literally no other girl in the series does, is comfort Natsu when he is motion sick. Literally, anytime they are on a train or whatever, Wendy is always the only one to actually try and help Natsu out when he is sick. Huh. This further proves the point that Wendy actually cares about Natsu a lot and has feelings for him. You don't see anybody else in the series doing this. They just leave him to his own devices. But not Wendy. Though then she gets motion sick too, and she can't really do anything about it. And then they're both screwed. But at least they can be motion sick together. Motion sickness OTP. Now, moving on to the Avatar arc, where we get an actual canonical scene outright stating Wendy's crush on Natsu, as well as stating how it has evolved into love. Shelia straight up asked Wendy if she loves Natsu, to which Wendy replies by blushing and getting all flustered and embarrassed about it. That says enough right there. But if it didn't, you have the final part of that scene further exemplifying it by Shelia telling Wendy to follow her heart. That line is ultimately what spurs Wendy to go and decide to rejoin Fairy Tail, because she wants to follow her heart so that she can be with Natsu. Put two and two together. The girl is in love with the man. It's not up for debate. The proof is in the pudding right there. That whole episode was even titled Because of Love. Do I really need to say any more there? I feel like my tone started being directed towards NaWen haters, so sorry about that to my NaWen brethren if my tone ended up sounding like that, but I just really needed to put emphasis on how much it is blatantly obvious that Wendy is actually into Natsu as a romantic love interest. Because boy, are some people so freaking stupid and asinine about it. Whew. But anyway, let's move on to the next section, shall we? So, going even further along to after Wendy had joined the guild, you see this aspect of Natsu grow even more. It grows further and further along as the story progresses. He starts doing things like taking her on jobs with him and wanting to accompany her on dangerous jobs. Now, Natsu usually understands that most of his guildmates can take care of themselves, and Wendy is no exception to this. However, he is still constantly shown worrying about her well-being the most. And yes, Natsu 100% worries about Wendy's well-being the most. Yes, more than Lucy, but we'll get into that later. However, that is going to lead us into the next segment of this video, that being Natsu's and Wendy's chemistry. Alright, I've been waiting for this one, because here is where I get to discuss and debunk a common, yet horribly wrong NaWen, or anti-NaWen, I should say, myth. But first, we're just going to discuss what Natsu's and Wendy's chemistry in general is like. So, let's start, shall we? Natsu's and Wendy's chemistry is very engaging, and they bounce off of each other very well. Natsu's hyperactive, impulsive, humorous, kind of not all there personality really bounces off of Wendy's more gentle, polite, kind persona. Whenever Natsu makes a rash or poor decision, Wendy is always the first one to comfort and console him. She is the most likely one to always take his side, to try and understand and sympathize with his way of thinking. When everyone else is ridiculing him, she will be the one that is defending him. Every time. This is one of the reasons why Natsu and Wendy by far have the most pleasant interactions in the series. Think about it. Not a single time have they ever argued with each other, fought with each other, or even insulted each other. None of that. It's always super pleasant, warm, nice, and kind. And this involves Natsu, by the way. Natsu, who fights with practically anyone, trolls practically anyone, makes jokes about practically anyone. He does none of that with Wendy. None of that. This proves that Natsu is sweeter to Wendy than literally any other girl in the series. These are facts, alright? Straight facts. Another example of this would be how Natsu fights with Wendy compared to how he fights with literally any other character in the series. Usually, when Natsu fights in a tag team, he will do one of two things. He will A, end up fighting with his teammate in the middle of the battle, or B, troll his teammate in the middle of the battle. Examples of these would be when he fought with Gajil against Sting and Rogue. You all saw what happened. He ended up pushing Gajil out of the arena because he wanted to basically show off and do 1 versus 2 against Sting and Rogue. A similar thing kind of happened in the Tartarus arc, though not exactly. The point is, he ended up fighting with Gajil in the middle of the battle again. Because that's typically the Natsu thing to do. The other typical Natsu thing to do would be to troll his teammate in the middle of the battle. Prime example of this would be when he fought with Lucy against Kane. You saw what happened there too, right? He literally effed around with the doll, just having fun, while the life was in danger, by the way. Also, I quote, "This will be the greatest thing ever, if you live." How do people think that's a good ship? Now, as we saw in the second half of the Grand Magic Games arc, Wendy is the only one who Natsu is always completely serious with when he's fighting with her. Wendy is the only one who can actually get Natsu to focus without even needing to say anything. That whole scene of them fighting in the underground palace pretty much sums up why the chemistry is so great. Yukino saying how he trusts her, she trusts him, Lucy saying how they can probably read each other's thoughts and all that, That is good chemistry. Alright, now we're going to get into the part that I've been waiting for a lot. Are any of you NaWen haters still here? I hope so, because this one is for you. So listen up, because I want your undivided attention for this. You listening? Alright, good. We're going to talk about the common misconception that Natsu and Wendy are like brother and sister, and how utterly bullshit that is. Okay, so here's the thing. Brothers and sisters fight. They argue. They bicker. They do not get along 24/7. They are not always super friendly with each other. They get tired of being around each other every once in a while. None of these things have ever once applied to Natsu and Wendy. Now, true enough, not every brother and sister has the typical brother and sister relationship that society is known for. There are some who do get along and break these rules. However, those kinds of siblings are the exception rather than the norm. But hey, if you're one of them, that's awesome. However, since we're talking about the notion that Natsu and Wendy are quote-unquote like brother and sister, that automatically negates the argument that, hey, there are some siblings who do get along really well. Alright? Since the very definition of like is supposed to apply to the general knowledge of something. meaning that argument just doesn't hold true. Meaning that saying that Natsu and Wendy are like brother and sister is just completely false.
Listen, Wendy, you need to go and be by Natsu's side again.
What?
You love him, don't you?
Hold on! You're making it sound like something else!
You see that? When she was asked if she loves Natsu, she instantly blushed and got flustered and turned her head away. Now tell me, how many of you people have a sibling? And how many of you would do that if you were asked if you loved your sibling? Yeah, I thought so. Obviously, people do not blush like that when they're asked if they love their sibling. You know, unless they actually are into them. In which case, we're not getting into that because this is not Yasuga no Sora or Reimo. Alright? This is fairy tale. And I've never seen Elfman, Mira, or Lizana blush when asked if they love each other. Wonder why that is, huh? Probably because it's not something that siblings do. It doesn't matter that Wendy said she admires him like a big brother when she is blushing about it, okay? That fact automatically denies that claim. Plus, come on. How many shows, movies, anime, etc. have you seen where there's a group of childhood friends or a pair of childhood friends or whatever, one of them has a crush on the other, and they say, "Oh no, it's not like that. I just like them like a brother, sister, or whatever." Then they start dating. How many times have you seen that? Because I, for one, know that I've seen it quite a bit. So that means nothing when it's the person that's blushing about it and being asked about it saying that. It means literally nothing. They're blushing for crying out loud. Come on now. And don't try and give me any crap about Wendy only blushing because she is shy. Her shyness is long gone by that point, alright? So don't even try and say that bullshit, because it just doesn't work. Sure, she blushes and gets flustered at sexual stuff, but that has never once been the case for her in romance. As a matter of fact, she has constantly been shown to actually be heavily interested in romance. Prime examples. When she was talking to Juvia about getting a present for Gray, she was worried about how she's never given a present to a boy before, showing that she actually thinks about that kind of stuff. Another prime example, in the movie Dragon Cry, and she thought that the kingdom of Stella looked really romantic with all the stellanium. She actually is into the romance. She wouldn't just blush at the aspect of romance, as she hasn't ever done it before when she was talking about it. You see what I'm saying here? Anyway, now that I have torn that idiotic, mind-numbing, completely false claim about the Natsu and Wendy relationship to pieces, let's move on to the final segment of this video. Natsu's and Wendy's growth. Or rather, how Natsu and Wendy would grow and benefit from each other by having a romantic relationship. Alright, so, how exactly would Natsu and Wendy benefit from each other by starting a romance? Well, Natsu brings out Wendy's inner strength, as was shown constantly throughout the series, but one prime example would be in the Tartaros arc. You all know the one, when Wendy finally unlocked her Dragon Force by remembering how Natsu unlocked his and using him as a reference for it. By using Natsu as a reference and a guide, as she has always done, she was able to finally unlock her own Dragon Force and also her own hidden potential. Not only on the outside, but also her inner strength on the inside. Even before the Tartarus arc, you see her growing more and more bold throughout each and every arc. This is because Natsu is a prime player in her character development. That alone pretty much shows just how beneficial a romantic relationship with Natsu would be for Wendy. As they would get to live together and spend even more time together, Natsu would be able to do even more about bringing out more of Wendy's inner strength. Now, in Wendy's case, Wendy brings out Natsu's gentler side. There are tons and tons and tons of good examples of this. But some of the most prominent ones would be in the Nirvana arc, when you see Natsu bowing down to Wendy, saying that he'll overlook her reviving Jalal, and just being really understanding about her doing that in the first place, even though we all know how much he hated Jalal back then. Even so, he was really considerate towards her feelings. Again, not the typical Natsu thing to do, but he did it for Wendy, who, again at that point, was pretty much still a stranger to him. Another example would be in the Edalus arc, back when Carla was less of a female cat and, more of a female dog, when she was basically ridiculing everyone else in Fairy Tail, saying that she didn't care what happened to them, and Natsu was about to go off on her. Wendy was able to actually stop him and calm him down. The thing that usually only Urza can do, and even then she has to actually do it with threats. Wendy pretty much just told him to stop and held on to his chest a little bit, but I mean, come on. Obviously, you can't hold Natsu back. He chose to stop and listen to her. Just because. Because she's Wendy. Again, this shows that Wendy is able to bring out Natsu's gentler and softer side. That is a very good thing to have for a relationship. When two characters are able to bring out the best in each other. Neither one causes the other any undue stress, and they always get along really well. That is a very good thing for Natsu to have as he grows older and decides to, settle down. The term settling down pretty much speaks for itself. Natsu can't always be as impulsive and rash and hard-headed as he usually is. Who better for him to marry than the one who is able to get him to calm down, relax, and just chill out, by doing it in a really nice and kind way, no less. I say that there isn't anyone better for the job than Wendy. As was shown in the two examples I gave, as well as plenty of other moments throughout the series. And I think it's pretty clear that the same applies for Wendy. Nobody else is able to bring out her inner and outer strength as Natsu is. Nobody else. It's not even a competition, honestly. So, put both of those together and you get a really nice and mutual, beneficial romantic relationship between the two of them. They both benefit from it. There's no negativity in it. It's just smooth sailing. Though that is kind of the ideal romantic relationship, I will admit. And not a lot of real life relationships are like that. This is anime, so the only kind of ships I want to ship are the ones that seem like they would perfectly be able to work out and would have no hiccups along the way. I can't even imagine how they would ever divorce or break up or anything if they actually got together. And that is what makes me want to actually ship it. All in all, it just seems like a completely perfect relationship. So, to sum it all up, Natsu and Wendy have very good relationship development with a strong and unique bond that progresses thoroughly throughout the entire series. Believable chemistry full of very kind, pleasant, and warm-hearted interactions. And a huge potential for romantic growth in a way that will positively impact both of the characters, both inside and out, helping them to understand each other and grow further as a couple, and also overcoming their own inner flaws. Put all of this together, and you have all of the reasons why NaWen is a good ship, and why I ship it. So this concludes the NaWen discussion, but first, before I end the video, I would like to give a couple of shoutouts. If you are starved for more glorious NaWen content like I am, then I recommend checking out these YouTube channels. The first is Nikki Text. Now, if you watch my videos, then I'm pretty sure you've already seen Nikki's stuff, or at least know about him. But if you haven't, then definitely check out his channel. He has a whole entire tech story about NaWen and a lot of other stuff into it too. So if you're interested, you should definitely check him out. The other one is Fairies Have Tales. Again, they make tech stories about NaWen as well. Both of them are really good, so definitely check them out when you get a chance. Now, before I end the video, I'm just going to do some shameless advertising. But if you like my video, then you can check out my fanfiction or Wattpad, whichever platform works for you. And I have a lot of NaWen stories on both of those platforms as well. So go ahead and please check them out. I've got Fantasia Dance, which is completed. It has 8 chapters, and it's probably my most popular story so far, which is awesome because I did put a lot of hard work into that, so yeah. I also have The Perfect Marriage and The Baby Simulation Project, both ongoing stories. And I have one NaWen one-shot called Love Transcends Time. So go ahead and check out any of those if you want. And if you're already up to date on all of those, then a bit more shameless advertising, but I also write stories on fanfiction's sister site called Fiction Press. It's basically like fanfiction, like the website, except you write original stories on it. I have a lot of original stories that I write on that, but the main one I focus on is called Forbidden Book, with 93 chapters so far and ongoing. It was actually the first story I wrote on there, so the beginning chapters are kind of very apparent about it, but if you want to, then you can check that out. It's gotten really better as it went along, or at least I think so, and some of my reviewers think so as well, so if you do want to see some of my original works as well, that would be awesome. Or if you're just curious to see how my prose writing first got started, then you can check it out for that reason too. And before I end this video, I've got one last thing to say. I have a NaWen subreddit. We've got about 19 members so far. And if you're not one of them yet, please consider joining, as it is basically, as I like to call it, a NaWen haven. Much like the definition of haven, it is a place where us Nahwen shippers are able to take refuge and ship NaWen in peace away from all the idiots who try and hate on the ship for no reason. Thankfully, we haven't had any intruders so far, or at least not like in the discussion boards or anything like that. Though we have had some lurkers who have copied and pasted the pictures to their own Wattpad rants, so that's interesting. Can't really do much about that. Though I was able to get Wattpad to make them take down the NaWen fan art that I commissioned. So, take that, sucker. But anyway, if you're interested in that, please consider joining the NaWen subreddit. We've got the fan art, we've got the fanfics, and we've got some discussions about NaWen as well. I'm also hoping to add more and more content as it grows and grows and expands. So, please consider joining if you're interested in it. And with all that being said, that concludes this video. D-Master, out.